The grand chamber of the Galactic Concord hummed with the low thrum of translation fields, their invisible webs knitting a babel of tongues into fragile unity. Elder Vorsic of the Vexery perched on his tiered dais, his chitinous limbs clicking in rhythmic impatience as he surveyed the assembly. The air recyclers whispered cool drafts through the vaulted hall, carrying faint scents of ozone and alien flora from the hydroponic gardens beyond. Vorsic's multifaceted eyes gleamed under the simulated starlight, fixed on the empty delegate seat at the far end of the crescent table. "Order," he intoned, his voice a resonant buzz amplified by the chamber's acoustics. The word rippled out, silencing the murmurs that had built like a gathering storm. Around him, representatives from a dozen worlds shifted in their ergonomic pods, silvery Krell with their elongated necks, the feathered Sifri fluffing indignant plumage, and the ever-stoic Lumari, their gelatinous forms rippling in subtle waves of color. Humanity's absence yawned like a void in the room's geometry, their allocated space barren save for a single data slate, dark and untouched. Delegate Lyra of the Sifri leaned forward, her crest feathers quivering. "Elder Vorsic, we cannot proceed without addressing the elephant, or whatever primitive beast they idolized, in the chamber. Humanity's delegation has not transmitted so much as a ping in 3 cycles. Are we to debate resource allocations as if their sector doesn't represent a full fifth of the Outer Rim's output?" Vorsic's mandibles parted in what passed for a sigh among his kind. He had anticipated this. The humans had always been the unpredictable variable in these proceedings, their brash proposals laced with that peculiar optimism that bordered on recklessness. The records show their last communication cited unforeseen stellar interference in the Sol system. Probes dispatched returned nominal readings, traffic patterns intact, no signs of catastrophe. Yet here we sit. A low rumble emanated from the Krell emissary, Theric, his throat sacs inflating with each syllable. Nominal? Their automated factories churn without oversight. Drones harvest asteroids as if directed by ghosts. If this is interference, it's one that serves their interests still. Perhaps they test us, withdrawing to gauge our resolve. The Lumari envoy, a shimmering orb named Eloan, pulsed a soft azure, her form contracting in what the translators rendered as unease. Or perhaps its hubris repaid. Their expansion into the Veil Nebula, unconsulted as always, could have provoked something dormant. We warned them of the ancient signals there, echoes of pre-Concord entities. Vorsic raised a forelimb, staving off the rising tide of speculation. The chamber's walls, etched with holographic murals of past accords, seemed to lean in, expectant. He recalled the last human delegate, Captain Elena Ruiz, her dark eyes fierce as she argued for joint ventures into uncharted voids. "Humanity brings grit," she'd said, pounding the table with a fist that made the Vexery sensors jitter. "We don't conquer space, we wrestle it into shape." Now that seat echoed with silence. "Speculation yields no data," Vorsic declared, his voice cutting through the din. "We activate Protocol Epsilon. Interim custodianship of human assets until contact resumes. Theric, your mining fleets will secure the Outer Rim relays. Lyra, coordinate with the Sifri scouts for direct surveillance. Eloan, analyze the Veil anomalies for any correlation." Theric's sacs deflated in reluctant agreement, but Lyra's feathers bristled anew. "And if they are truly gone? Do we dismantle their legacy or preserve it as a monument to folly?" The question hung unanswered as the assembly broke into smaller clusters, voices overlapping in a cacophony of concern. Vorsic remained seated, his gaze lingering on the empty chair. Outside the chamber's viewports, the stars wheeled indifferently, Sol's distant spark a mere pinprick amid the expanse. For the first time in centuries, the Concord felt unbalanced, as if a vital gear had slipped from the machine. Deep in the bowels of the station, unbeknownst to the debaters, a human maintenance drone, sleek and unassuming, hovered through access conduits, its sensors pinging silent queries to a network long gone quiet. It paused at a junction, recalibrating before gliding onward, a lone sentinel in the gathering shadows. The alien delegates shifted in their vast chamber, the hum of translation fields buzzing like distant insects. Crix, the insectoid from Zorath Prime, clicked his mandibles in agitation, his compound eyes reflecting the holographic displays flickering with outdated human data. They were primitives, he insisted, his voice a staccato rhythm through the speakers. Reliance on carbon-based intuition over neural links. How could such a species propel us forward? Beside him, Lyriel of the Illyrian Collective floated serenely, her tendrils undulating in the low gravity. She had always been the voice of measured curiosity among the council, her bioluminescent skin pulsing softly blue. Primitives who built star-spanning networks from scavenged wrecks, she countered, projecting a sim of the old Sol system, Earth a blue marble now silent and adrift. Their absence leaves voids in our archives. Debates like this one echo emptily without their contrarian spark. The chamber's central orb, a nexus of shared consciousness, dimmed slightly as if in agreement, but Vorn, the hulking representative from the Crag Dominion, slammed a fist on his console. His scales rasped against the alloy, a sound like grinding stones. Vorn was all blunt force, his warrior heritage making diplomacy feel like a poorly balanced blade. Voids? They were liabilities. Remember the uprising of 47? Humans jury-rigged a warp disruptor from mining drones and nearly shattered the armistice. If they're gone, good riddance. Let the debate end. We've enough fractures without invoking ghosts. Lyriel extended a tendril toward the orb, pulling up a fragment of archived footage. A human engineer, grease-streaked and grinning, patching a hull breach mid-battle with nothing but sealant and spite. Liabilities who saved your fleet twice over. Their ingenuity wasn't in perfection, it was in adaptation. We integrated their tech into our shields, yet now we quibble over echoes. Crick scuttled closer, his legs tapping an impatient tattoo. Adaptation born of desperation. Without them, our progress accelerates unhindered. Propose we seal the human sector, repurpose their relics for pure research. The orb flared, aggregating votes in swirling patterns. Vorn grunted approval, but Lyriel hesitated, her glow flickering amber. Outside the chamber's viewports, the void stretched, stars mocking their isolation. The debate dragged on, but a subtle alert pinged, unverified signals from the old Sol fringe. Faint human-like patterns. Or just cosmic noise. Lyriel leaned in, tendrils coiling tight. The chamber's air hummed with the low thrum of ventilation systems, a mechanical heartbeat that had outlasted the delegates' enthusiasm. Elder Vexer leaned forward in his hovering seat, his tendrils twitching with barely contained frustration. The holographic display flickered above the central dais, replaying grainy footage of the human vessel's final approach to the nebula, a speck of defiance swallowed by swirling violet gases. We cannot afford another miscalculation, Vexer rasped, his voice like grinding silicate. The humans vanished without a trace, but their technology lingers. Probes report anomalous energy signatures deep within the core. Across the table, Liaison Cree tilted her elongated head, her bioluminescent eyes pulsing in rhythmic dissent. She was the cautious one, always weighing the Council's impulsive decisions against the fragile alliances of the Concord. Anomalous? That's diplomatic speak for unpredictable. We've lost 3 scout drones already. If we send a full expedition, we're committing resources we don't have, not with the rimward skirmishes heating up. Her fingers drummed on the armrest, a subtle tell of her unease. The other delegates murmured agreement, their forms shifting in the dim light. The bulky form of Gorith from the Forge Worlds, silent and brooding, and nimble Syl from the Archive Enclaves, scribbling notes on a floating tablet. Vexer waved a tendril dismissively, but his eyes lingered on the hologram. The humans had been anomalies themselves, brash, inventive creatures who'd bartered fusion tech for nebula access rights mere cycles ago. Now gone. Caution has its place, Cree, but so does opportunity. What if their ship breached something vital? A rift, perhaps, or a weapon cache left unstable. The Concord's supremacy hangs on controlling such unknowns. He paused, letting the words settle like dust in the recycled air. The chamber's walls, etched with the sigils of 100 worlds, seemed to close in, amplifying the weight of their indecision. Syl cleared her throat, her voice a soft chime amid the tension. Records show the humans spoke of harvesting the nebula's exotic particles for their drives. If they succeeded, the energy yield could power entire sectors. But failure. The simulations predict cascade failures in local gravity wells. She projected a new overlay, swirling models of gravitational distortions, red zones blooming like wounds. Gorith grunted, his massive shoulders rolling in what passed for a nod among his kind. Then we harvested ourselves. Or let it rot and invite the Vorik scavengers. Kree shot to her feet, her hoverchair wobbling. Harvest? With what? Our fleet stretched thin, and the last joint venture with the Outer Rings cost us a frigate. This isn't about energy, it's about pride. The humans poked the void, and now we're debating their ghost. Her words cut sharp, drawing sidelong glances. Vexor met her gaze, unyielding. The hologram looped again, the human ship dissolving into static, a silent accusation. As the debate spiraled, a soft chime echoed from the chamber's perimeter, a priority alert. Vexor's console lit up with incoming data, a faint signal, human in origin, pulsing from the nebula's heart. The delegates froze, the air thickening with possibility. Kree's eyes widened. "That's no ghost," she whispered. "It's a beacon." Vexor straightened, his tendrils coiling tight. "Then we answer it. Assemble the expedition team, small, elite. No more talk." The chamber erupted in overlapping voices, plans fracturing and reforming like the nebula itself. But beneath the resolve a shadow lingered. What if the humans hadn't vanished? What if they'd been waiting? The dim glow of the holoscreens flickered across the chamber's vaulted ceiling, casting elongated shadows that danced like specters over the assembled delegates. Kaler, the Vorsith elder with his iridescent scales dulled by centuries of deliberation, leaned forward in his suspensor chair, his multifaceted eyes narrowing at the central projection. It displayed the swirling remnants of Sol's outer system. Empty now, save for derelict probes and the faint echo of automated signals that had gone silent months ago. "We cannot ignore the data," Kaler intoned, his voice a resonant hum that vibrated through the chamber's crystalline walls. He gestured with a clawed hand, zooming the hologram to a cluster of asteroid belts where human mining outposts had once buzzed with activity. Their expansion was methodical, not reckless. They adapted to radiation storms that would have crippled our own fleets. Yet now, nothing. Across the table, Virax snarled, her mandibles clicking in agitation. The warrior from the Crag Dominion paced the perimeter of the debate circle, her armored exoskeleton gleaming under the artificial lights. She was all sharp edges and unyielding resolve, her kind bred for conquest rather than contemplation. Adaptation? It's cowardice masked as strategy. They fled before we could even convene this farce of a council. If humanity lingers anywhere, it's in the shadows, plotting sabotage. We should strike the core worlds preemptively, glass their moons and be done with it. The third voice, softer but no less pointed, cut through the tension like a vibro knife. Lyra, the ethereal form of the Ilari analyst, hovered in her containment field, her tendrils of light pulsing with calculated restraint. She was the cautious one, her species' collective mind always weighing probabilities against the unknown. Strike blindly, Virax, and we invite the very chaos they evaded. Our scouts report anomalous energy signatures in the Orc cloud, patterns that mimic human warp signatures but evade detection. If they are gone, as the title of this session implies, then why do these ghosts persist? Perhaps they anticipated our debate, engineered their absence to force our hand. Kaler nodded slowly, his scales rippling in agreement. The chamber hummed with the low buzz of translation implants syncing across species, but beneath it lay the unspoken weight of the stakes. The Galactic Concord's resources were stretched thin after the Veil incursion. A prolonged hunt for a vanished species could fracture alliances. He recalled the initial reports, humanity's bold foray into uncharted nebulae, their ingenuity turning toxic gas giants into fuel depots while others retreated. It had been admirable, almost enviable, until the silence fell. Virax halted her pacing, slamming a fist onto the table's edge. The impact sent a ripple through the holofield, distorting the image of Earth's blue marble, now a quarantined relic. Anticipated? You're crediting these primates with prescience they don't possess. I say we deploy the armada. Let the debate end in action, not endless what-ifs. Lyra's lights dimmed fractionally, a sign of her unease. Action without intelligence is the path to obsolescence. Consider the cost. Our fleets diverted, economies strained. If humanity's ingenuity outpaced us once, what makes you think blind aggression won't play into their hands? The elder raised a telephone for silence as the chamber's alert chimes sounded, a priority transmission from the outer rim. Kaler's eyes widened at the feed, a derelict human vessel, adrift and broadcasting a looping message in fragmented universal. It wasn't a plea or a threat, but a blueprint, schematics for a drive that bent spacetime without the exotic matter their own tech required. The implications hung heavy, unspoken. If humanity was truly gone, they'd left a parting gift, or perhaps a trap. Virax's mandibles parted in a predatory grin. See? They're taunting us. Time to end this. But Kaler stared at the hologram, the chamber's air thickening with the scent of ionized circuits. The debate twisted onward, each revelation pulling them deeper into the void humanity had vacated. The dim glow of the holographic displays flickered across the chamber's vaulted ceiling, casting long shadows that danced like uneasy specters. Ilara, the cautious archivist from the Veil Concord, hunched over the console, her tendrils twitching with frustration. She'd always been the one to double-check the archives, to ensure no data thread unraveled before its time. Beside her, Corvith, the brash explorer from the Rim clans, paced with his armored boots clanging against the metal grating. His wit was sharp as a plasma cutter, but right now it was edged with impatience. Nothing, Ilara muttered, her voice a low hum through the translator. These human transmissions cut off mid-cycle. No registro signals, no final logs. It's as if they evaporated. Corvith snorted, halting to lean against a bulkhead. Evaporated? Come on, Ilara. Humans were scrappy. Remember that skirmish on Vega Prime? They turned a junkyard hauler into a blockade runner with nothing but tape and spite. If they're gone, it's not by accident. She shot him a glance, her multifaceted eyes narrowing. The chamber hummed with the distant whir of the council's deliberation feeds, endless arguments about resource reallocations now that Sol's sector lay silent. But here in this subarchive the real work gnawed at them. Lyra, their third, the quiet tactician from the Nebula Enclave, sat cross-legged on the floor, interfacing directly with a salvaged human probe. Her calm demeanor hid a mind like a star map, always plotting 3 jumps ahead. The probe's core was a relic, pulled from the debris field orbiting Mars. It had been broadcasting loop data for decades, a ghost in the machine. Lyra's fingers danced over neural links, pulling threads of code that tasted of rust and urgency. Wait, she said softly, her voice cutting through the tension like a cool breeze. There's a subroutine buried here. Encrypted but human style. Layers on layers, like they wanted it found only if someone looked hard enough. Corvith crouched beside her, his broad frame eclipsing the light. What kind of encryption? Military? No. Lyra's eyes fluttered behind closed lids. Cultural. References to something called chess. A game of strategy misdirection. It's masking coordinates, not to a ship or colony but a structure. Deep in the Oort cloud. Ilara straightened, her tendrils coiling tightly. The Oort? That's a graveyard of ice and forgotten probes. Why hide there? Before Corvith could crack a joke, the chamber's alert chime pierced the air. Red lights pulsed along the walls, and the main feed from the council chamber flooded the holoscreen. Ambassador Thaler, the pompous delegate from the core worlds, was mid-rant, his frills flaring. Humanity's absence is a boon. Their chaotic expansion disrupted trade lanes for eons. We proceed with the Sol reclamation vote. The feed glitched, static ripping through Thaler's words. In its place, a fragmented human video log materialized, unbidden. A weathered face filled the screen. A human engineer, grease-streaked and defiant, speaking into a helmet cam. If you're seeing this, the Veil's got our signal. We couldn't stay. The anomaly, it's rewriting physics. But we left you a key. Play the game right or it consumes everything. The log cut out, leaving silence thicker than nebula fog. Corvith broke it first, his laugh bark-like. A key? In the Oort? That's their idea of a goodbye. Lyra unplugged, her face pale. It's not a goodbye. It's a challenge. The coordinates point to an artificial construct, Massive, shielded. If we go, we risk the Council's wrath. Reclamation votes in hours. Ilara's mind raced, weighing the archive's warnings against the pull of unknown data. Caution screamed to report it, let the bureaucrats squabble. But the humans' eyes in that log, they burned with the same grit she'd read in their histories. We can't ignore this, she said finally, voice steady. If it's a weapon or a trap, or whatever they built, it changes everything. Corvith grinned, slapping the console. Then we steal a scout ship. Quick in, quick out. Show these debaters what real exploration looks like. Lyra nodded, already sketching vectors in the air with her interface. But as they moved to prep, a subtle tremor shook the chamber, a faint echo from Sol's direction, like the void itself was listening. The cost of curiosity pressed in. One wrong move and they'd join the silence. Yet turning back felt like surrender, and none of them were built for that. Ilara's fingers trembled as she pried open the rusted panel, the faint hiss of escaping air the only sound in the dim corridor. The chamber's lights flickered above, casting long shadows that danced like specters across the bulkheads. She'd volunteered for this run, said it was her turn to prove the humans' worth, but now, with the debate echoing in her mind from the broadcast feeds, doubt gnawed at her. The council chambers back on the homeworld were still droning on about resource allocation, alliances, the endless bureaucracy of the Galactic Accord, oblivious to the fact that one species had simply vanished. Keep it steady, Jax muttered from behind her, his voice a low rumble through the comms. He was the cautious one, always double-checking seals and scanning for traps, his broad frame blocking the exit like a sentinel. Ilara nodded, though he couldn't see it, and wedged her tool into the lock. The panel groaned, then gave way, revealing a nest of frayed cables and a single glowing data core pulsing with residual energy. She reached in, careful not to brush the live wires. Stories from the old archives warned of shocks that could fry a nervous system in seconds. The core came free with a soft click, warm in her palm, its surface etched with human script she could barely decipher. Got it? She whispered, pulling back. But as she turned, a distant rumble shook the station, dust sifting from the ceiling like fine rain. Alarms blared faintly, a warning from the failing life support. Jax's hand clamped on her shoulder. That wasn't us. Move, now. They bolted down the corridor, the core clutched tight, boots pounding against the grated floor. Behind them, the bulkhead they'd passed groaned and buckled, a section of the hull giving way to the void. The environmental hazard that had claimed the humans years ago, the unchecked micrometeor storm that breached the outer shields, was stirring again, or so the scans suggested. No rival group, no sabotage, just the cruel indifference of space reclaiming its own. Ilara's breath came in sharp bursts as they rounded a corner into the auxiliary bay. Lyra was waiting there, her witty edge softened by worry, fingers flying over a makeshift console patched from scavenged parts. Took you long enough, Lyra quipped, but her eyes widened at the core. Is that the navigation log? The one they said held the key to their exodus. Jax sealed the door behind them, the clang echoing like a finality. If it is, we're one step from decoding why they left without a word. But that rumble, hull integrity's dropping fast. We can't stay. Ilara slotted the core into the console, her hand steadier now. Lines of code flickered to life, fragmented logs spilling across the screen. Coordinates, encrypted transmissions, a trail leading toward the outer rim. But interspersed were warnings, radiation spikes, failing reactors, a desperate evacuation that left the station as a ghost. The humans hadn't abandoned the Accord. They'd fled something worse, something the Council still debated in ignorance. A sharper tremor hit, tilting the bay. Consoles sparked, and Lyra cursed, rerouting ING power manually. Plan B, it's failing. We overload the secondary thrusters to buy time, but that'll burn out our reserves. No margin for error on the return trip. Ilara met Jax's gaze, saw the grit there, the unspoken trust forged in a dozen close calls. Do it, she said, voice firm. We're not leaving empty-handed. Not when this could change everything. Lyra initiated the sequence, the station shuddering as auxiliary systems whined to life. The core's data streamed into their portable drive just as the bay door buckled inward, icy vacuum clawing at the edges. Jax hauled them toward the escape pod, Ilara last, the drive secure in her suit. They launched with a jolt, the station receding in the viewport, a skeletal relic, its secrets half revealed. But as the pod streaked away, Ilara glanced back, the glowing core's light fading in her mind. The debate continued without them, without humanity's shadow. Whatever the humans had run from, it lingered out there in the dark between stars, waiting for the next foolhardy souls to chase it. The dim glow of the chamber's holographic displays flickered like dying stars, casting long shadows across the assembled delegates. Kaler, the wiry ambassador from the Verdant Accord, leaned forward in his pod, his frilled neck pulsing with restrained agitation. "We cannot ignore the data streams any longer," he insisted, his voice a sharp trill that cut through the hum of translators. "The human vessel's trajectory has veered into the nebula's core. If they intended sabotage, why broadcast their distress signal on open channels? It's as if they're inviting us to watch." Across the curved table, Lyra of the Stellar Collective adjusted her crystalline exoskeleton with a soft chime, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the swirling chaos of the projected nebula. She had always been the cautious one, her decisions measured like the slow orbit of gas giants. "Inviting us or luring us," she countered, her words resonating in harmonic layers. "Their ingenuity is legendary, those crude fusion drives repurposed into weapons mid-battle, or the time they jury-rigged a warp field from salvage to escape our blockade. This could be another ploy. We debate while they slip away, humanity's shadow lengthening across the void." The chamber murmured, a chorus of alien cadences blending into unease. Only three remained at the core table now: Kaler, ever the bold explorer, Lyra, the steadfast guardian, and Vex, the enigmatic envoy from the Shadow Enclave, who lounged in silence, his form a shifting veil of adaptive camouflage. The others had filtered out after the initial scans confirmed the anomaly: no human signatures in the outer rims, just echoes of their fleeting empire. Vex finally stirred, his voice a low rasp like gravel underfoot. "Gone? Or hidden? Humans don't vanish, they adapt. Remember the siege of Epsilon? They turned our own cloaking tech against us, emerging from the debris like ghosts." Kaler slammed a tendril against the console, the impact sending a ripple through the hollow map. The nebula expanded in response, its turbulent clouds parting to reveal the faint outline of the human ship, the Endeavor, drifting perilously close to a plasma storm. Sparks of ionized gas licked at its hull, eroding the makeshift shields pieced together from asteroid ore and salvaged drone parts. "Look there, their engines are failing. Resource shortage, perhaps, after evading our patrols for cycles. If we intervene, we risk the Accord's neutrality. But if we don't..." He trailed off, the weight of unspoken stakes hanging heavy. Lyra's crystals dimmed slightly, a sign of her internal calculations. She had seen human grit firsthand, during the joint expedition to the ice world of Thaler, where a single engineer had held a collapsing habitat together with sheer will and a coil of wire, saving her team in the process. "The challenge is environmental, not conquest," she said softly. "That storm will consume them and with it whatever knowledge they carry about the lost colonies. Our rivalry ends if they're dust." Vex chuckled, a sound like cracking ice. "Rivalry? They outmaneuvered us without firing a shot. Clever adaptation, that's their creed." He extended a pseudopod interfacing with the display. The holo zoomed in. Crew silhouettes moved frantically on the bridge, one figure, Captain Reyes no doubt, directing repairs with barked orders, her hands steady despite the shuddering deck. A plan formed in Vex's mind, unbidden. "We send a probe masked as debris. It gathers data, buys time. No direct aid, just observation. Earned triumph comes from watching them solve it themselves." The decision hung for a breath, then Kaler nodded, his frills relaxing. "Agreed. But if they signal again?" Lyra's eyes caught the light, resolute. As the probe launched silently into the nebula's maw, the chamber fell quiet, the delegates bound by this fragile pact. Outside, the storm raged on, a reminder that humanity's absence was no victory, only the prelude to greater unknowns. The Endeavor listed, its lights pulsing defiantly, and in that moment the aliens wondered if they were the ones being tested. The dim glow of the chamber's holographic displays flickered across Ilara's face as she paced the narrow aisle between the council seats. The air hummed with the low murmur of alien delegates, their elongated forms hunched over data pads, debating in clipped tones that echoed off the vaulted ceilings. Humanity's absence hung like a shadow, unspoken but felt in every pause, every glance toward the empty podium where Ambassador Hale should have stood. Ilara clenched her fists, her human-engineered suit creaking softly against her skin. She wasn't here to represent. She was here to salvage what scraps of alliance remained after the evacuation. Kale, the wiry Zarathian engineer at her side, tapped furiously on his wrist console, his three-fingered hands blurring. "The signal's degrading faster than predicted," he muttered, his voice a gravelly whisper that cut through the din. "If we don't reroute through the auxiliary relays now, the fleet's coordinates will be lost in the nebula's interference." His cautious nature showed in the way he glanced at her, eyes wide with the weight of potential failure, not for glory but for the lives tethered to those fading transmissions. Ilara nodded sharply, her brave resolve stealing her posture. She had always been the one to push forward, ever since the colony days when she jury-rigged failing life support with nothing but scavenged parts and sheer will. "Then we force the issue. Interrupt the debate. Get them to approve the override before they vote on isolation protocols." She stepped toward the central dais, ignoring the subtle shifts in the room as heads turned, the crystalline eyes of the Vexery narrowing, the feathered crests of the Aelori fluffing in agitation. The chamber's overseer, a towering sylph with iridescent scales, raised a clawed hand. "Intrusion is not permitted during formal discourse, Terran remnant." His voice boomed, laced with the artificial politeness of protocol. But Ilara didn't flinch. She activated her own console, projecting a holographic map of the nebula's swirling chaos onto the floor. Gasps rippled through the assembly as the image expanded, revealing the faint, pulsing signatures of human evacuation ships weaving through asteroid fields and plasma storms. "This isn't discourse," Ilara said, her words steady, cutting the tension like a blade. "It's delay. Your fleets hesitate and mine vanish. Approve the relay access or watch the last of us become ghosts in your archives." Kale edged closer, his witty retort bubbling under his breath. "Or we could all pretend the nebula's just a bad dream, and wake up to empty docking bays." Murmurs swelled into arguments, delegates leaning forward, their alien logics clashing like mismatched gears. The Vexery delegate hissed about resource allocation, citing the strain on their crystalline networks, while an Aelori elder trilled a counterpoint on shared peril. Ilara held her ground, sweat beading under her collar as Kale fed her real-time updates, signal strength dropping to 47%. The stakes pressed in. One wrong word, and the Council's vote would seal humanity's isolation, dooming the fleet to navigational blindness amid the hazards. Finally, the Sylph Overseer extended a claw, silencing the room with a resonant chime. "The override is granted. But mark this, your ingenuity buys time, not trust." Ilara exhaled, the holographic map stabilizing as Kale initiated the reroute. The chamber's lights brightened fractionally, but the empty podium loomed larger, a reminder that triumph here meant little without the voices it was meant to save. As the debate resumed, fractured and hurried, Ilara wondered if the cost of this fragile bridge would be worth the worlds it might yet connect, or the ones it couldn't reach in time. The chamber's holographic displays flickered with archived footage from Sol's final broadcasts, images of human ships weaving through asteroid fields like threads in a loom. Delegate Crix leaned forward, his multifaceted eyes narrowing at the central projector. "See here," he said, his voice a low buzz that cut through the murmurs. "They didn't just evade the swarm, they repurposed the debris, turned enemy fire into shielding. Ingenuity born of desperation, not some divine spark." Beside him, Lyra shifted in her seat, her tendrils coiling tightly around the armrest. She was the cautious one, always weighing risks against the Council's fragile unity. "Desperation leads to chaos, Crix. We've reviewed the timelines. Humanity's expansion accelerated after first contact. What if their absence is a ploy? A retreat to regroup, hidden in the outer rims?" Her words hung in the air, drawing nods from the quieter delegates, those who preferred the safety of protocol over bold speculation. Vex, the hot-headed from the Orion arm, slammed a claw on the table, the sound echoing off the vaulted ceilings. Ploy? They're gone. Scattered to the void or ascended beyond our sensors. And we're still debating sanctions on a ghost species. He paced, his armored exoskeleton glinting under the artificial lights. Vex had lost a fleet to human skirmishes decades ago. His grudge was a live wire, sparking every session. Crix ignored the outburst, gesturing to the hologram. It shifted to a grainy recording. A human engineer, face smeared with grease, barking orders amid the roar of failing engines. The ship behind her buckled under gravitational strain, but her team jury-rigged a fusion core with salvaged parts, stabilizing the hull just as a wormhole collapsed. Watch the adaptation, Crix urged. No retreat. They thrive on the edge. If they're truly vanished, it's because they've outgrown us, not fled. Lyra's tendrils uncurled slightly, betraying her intrigue. Outgrown? The data shows resource depletion in their core worlds. Earth itself is a husk, orbiting silent. She activated her own panel, pulling up spectral scans. Barren continents, oceans evaporated to salt flats. The chamber fell quieter, the weight of extinction pressing in. Vex snorted, halting his pace. Then why chase shadows? Declare the sector quarantined and move on. Their grit nearly unraveled the Accords. Remember Zeta Prime? One human colony turned a mining outpost into a fortress overnight. His voice softened, almost reluctant. Cost us 3 cruisers. Crix met his gaze, unyielding. And saved 1 million lives when the nebula storm hit. They shared the schematics, unprompted. He paused, the hologram freezing on the engineer's triumphant grin. Humanity's gone, yes. But their legacy debates with us still. What if we quarantine the wrong thing, their ideas? The chamber stirred as delegates exchanged glances. Lyra tapped her console, initiating a vote simulation. Lights danced across the floor, tallying projections. Tension coiled like a spring. Outside, the galactic core pulsed through the viewports, indifferent to the squabble. Vex resumed his seat, grumbling, while Crix watched the numbers climb, wondering if the humans had foreseen this very impasse, leaving the council to argue over echoes. The dim glow of the chamber's holographic displays flickered like dying stars, casting elongated shadows across the assembled delegates. Kaler, the stern Vexery enforcer with his chitinous armor scarred from a dozen border skirmishes, paced the central dais. His mandibles clicked in agitation, the sound echoing off the vaulted ceilings where ancient murals depicted forgotten alliances. We've wasted cycles on this prattle, he growled, his voice a rasp like grinding gravel. Humanity's silence isn't a mystery, it's abandonment. They fled the void storm when it mattered most, leaving us to face the rifts alone. Beside him, Lyriel, the ethereal sylph scholar, hovered in her containment field, her tendrils of light pulsing faintly. She had always been the cautious one, her decisions weighed against libraries of data rather than instinct. Now her glow dimmed as she accessed the latest feeds from the outer sensors. Fled? Or trapped? She murmured, her voice a harmonic chime that soothed even Kaler's frayed nerves. The displays bloomed with schematics, swirling anomalies in the galactic core, where humanity's frontier outposts had gone dark. Resource shortages plagued their fleet, fuel cells depleting faster than predicted, shields buckling under the storm's electromagnetic fury. One wrong jump, and entire squadrons vanished into the warp. Thorin, the burly Goroth tactician, slumped in his reinforced seat, his massive frame heaving with a sigh that rattled the nearby consoles. He was the witty counterpoint, his humor a blunt tool forged in the fires of endless drills, but tonight it rang hollow. Trapped like rats in a collapsing hull, he rumbled, scratching at the fur matted with sweat from hours of debate. Remember their ingenuity? Those jury-rigged drives they slapped together during the last incursion. If anyone's punching through that mess, it's them. But us? We're blind out here, burning reserves on probes that come back as scrap. The chamber hummed with the low thrum of auxiliary generators, a reminder of the power drain from the ongoing scans. Kaler halted his pacing, slamming a clawed fist onto the dais. The impact sent a ripple through the holograms, distorting the rift's jagged maw, a tear in spacetime spewing debris and radiation. Their early plan had backfired spectacularly. A Vanguard probe, loaded with experimental stabilizers borrowed from human designs, had only widened the anomaly instead of sealing it. Now the storm crept closer, threatening to engulf the Council's homeworld. Stakes rose with every passing hour. Evacuation protocols loomed, but who would lead if the core worlds fell? Lyriel extended a tendril, interfacing directly with the central nexus. Data streams flowed like liquid starlight through her form. The patterns matched their old logs, subspace echoes from the Soul Relay. They're not gone, they're fighting on the other side. Her words hung in the air, earnest amid the tension. Thorin leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Then why no hail? No clever trick to pull us in? Kaler snorted, but there was a flicker of doubt in his multifaceted gaze. The three of them had forged unlikely camaraderie through crises like this. Enforcer, scholar, tactician, bound by the void's unforgiving logic. A sudden alert pierced the chamber, klaxons wailing as secondary rifts bloomed along the periphery. The environmental hazard escalated, atmospheric breaches on outlying stations, crews gasping in thinning air. Thorin was on his feet first, barking coordinates into his comm. Redirect power to the outer arrays. Seal those breaches before we lose another habitat. Kaler nodded grimly, his bravery manifesting in swift action, while Lyriel wove adaptive algorithms, her caution yielding to necessity. They moved as one, a triad adapting where grand strategies had crumbled. Yet the cost lingered in the readouts. Depleted reserves meant no margin for error. As the storm's howl filtered through the reinforced viewports, a vortex of plasma and shattered worlds, the delegates pressed on. Humanity's absence weighed heavier than any debate, a silent challenge that forced them to innovate or perish. In the heart of the chamber, amid the sparking consoles, a fragile hope took root. If humans could endure the void's fury, so could they. But the rifts yawned wider, demanding more than words. The chamber's vast dome echoed with the rising clamor of voices, a cacophony of clicks, hisses, and modulated tones that blended into a storm of frustration. Elder Vexer leaned forward on his crystalline perch, his multifaceted eyes glinting under the artificial starlight that mimicked their long-lost homeworld. "We cannot ignore the data streams any longer," he intoned, his mandibles clicking sharply. "Humanity's absence disrupts the entire equilibrium. Their ingenuity, those relentless machines they called probes, has already mapped sectors we deemed impenetrable." Beside him, Liaison Cree shifted uneasily, her tentacles coiling around the edge of her console. She had always been the cautious one, the voice urging restraint amid the council's fervor. Now doubt etched lines into her iridescent skin. But what if this is their strategy? Feigned withdrawal to lure us into overextension. Remember the archives. They thrived on adaptation, turning scarcity into supremacy. Her words cut through the din, drawing nods from a few of the quieter delegates, though the majority surged with indignation. From the shadowed alcove, Delegate Thorn's gravelly rumble cut in, his armored form unmoving like a sentinel statue. He was the warrior caste's anchor, brave to the point of recklessness, and his patience had worn thin over cycles of fruitless debate. Strategy or not, we act. Their grit forged alliances across voids we could only observe. If they're gone, we claim the remnants, their outposts, their artifacts. Or we fade into irrelevance. He slammed a fist on the table, sending vibrations through the chamber's resonant floor, a stark image of fractured unity amid the holographic displays flickering with empty human colonies. The tension coiled tighter as projections bloomed, derelict stations orbiting gas giants, silent engines humming with residual power, all bearing the mark of human design, simple, robust, unyielding. Kree's console beeped urgently, pulling her gaze to a new alert. Incoming transmission, not from our relays. It's automated. From their final bastion. The chamber fell into a hush, broken only by the software of servos as all eyes fixed on the central holoscreen. The message unfolded in fragmented bursts, a human voice, calm, resolute, recounting their exodus. Not defeat, but evolution, a leap to uncharted realms, propelled by camaraderie that bound them beyond survival. "We leave gifts," the recording stated, "tools for those who seek truth, not conquest. Coordinates materialized, pointing to a nebulous heart, veiled in cosmic fire. Vexor rose, his form casting long shadows. This changes nothing, or everything. We pursue or we debate shadows eternally. Thorn growled agreement, but Kree hesitated, her mind racing through the risks. Traps woven from human cleverness or a bridge to greater horizons. The council fractured further, alliances shifting like sand under stellar winds, as the weight of absence pressed down, demanding a choice that could redefine their stars. The chamber's vast dome echoed with the final echoes of debate, voices from a dozen worlds clashing like distant thunder. The Galactic Concord's representatives leaned forward in their ornate seats, holograms flickering with data streams that painted humanity's absence in stark, unforgiving light. Elder Vree of the Zorith Collective adjusted his iridescent scales, his voice a low rumble that cut through the din. We have deliberated for cycles. The human sector remains silent. No transmissions, no beacons. They have vanished, or chosen exile. Across the aisle, Lyriel of the Etherians tilted her feathered crest, her eyes narrowing at the central projection, a swirling nebula where Earth's signature had once pulsed. She had argued for intervention earlier, her words sharp as a comet's tail. Chosen? Or erased? We cannot ignore the anomalies. The last logs from their outpost spoke of a rift, something they triggered in their endless tinkering. Her claws tapped the armrest, a rhythmic warning. No one mentioned the old fears, the stories of human ingenuity bordering on madness, but the tension hung like mist. Kale, the stoic envoy from the Draken hives, remained motionless, his chitinous form absorbing the chamber's ambient hum. He had been silent through most of the session, his mind link relaying calculations to his brood. Now he stirred. Probes dispatched. Results void. If they engineered their departure, it was total. Resources unclaimed, stations adrift. A pause, then, a subtle vibration in his voice. Regret, perhaps, for the alliances frayed by humanity's unpredictable aid in past crises. The chamber fell quieter, the weight of absence settling like dust on forgotten relics. In the shadowed alcove, Mira, the lone neutral observer from the fringe worlds, watched it all. She was no diplomat, just a salvager who'd traded with human crews, their laughter and bold fixes etched in her memory. Her hand tightened on the datapad hidden in her robes, its screen glowing with a single unauthorized signal she'd intercepted en route. Faint, encoded from beyond the nebula. Not silence but a whisper. Humanity gone? Or waiting as they always did for the right moment to re-emerge. As the vote tallied, abstention on reclamation, per the Concord's cautious charter, Lyriel rose, her wings half unfurling in defiance. This ends nothing. We watch the rift. If they return? She trailed off, the implication clear. Humans didn't fade quietly. The chamber's lights dimmed for recess, but in the corridors beyond, whispers spread. The debate continued, but the void where humanity should have been felt heavier, a promise of storms yet to break. Vree lingered at the projection, tracing the nebula's edge with a claw. One last anomaly flickered, a brief spark, gone before he could log it. He shook his head, scales dulling. Whatever the humans had done, it had rewritten the stars. And the galaxy, for all its vastness, suddenly seemed smaller without them.